So I'm going to assume you've read the question, and I would encourage you to pause and attempt to solve this question before looking at the solution. So um, we have a lot of information given to us in here, and they've also told us what to write an expression of. So we have x and y that we need to write an expression of. The first part asks us to write down 4 inequalities that have to be satisfied. So again, they've made it easy. They've told us there are 4 of them. So what you want to look at are the different relationships they've described for you. So they've told us one about the price. So I know that 50 cents is for each melon and 25 cents for each orange. And the person has $2 to spend. So if you're out buying something, you have a maximum of $2 to spend, which means the combination of melons and oranges that you're going to buy has to be less than or equal to the $2. So you always have to think about inequality in these questions. You don't want them to be equal to $2. You want them to be less than or equal to $2. So the key is to think inequality. So the first thing is, well, if I buy X melons, then it's going to cost me 50X. So 50 cents times each melon I buy. And then 25 cents for each oranges, so it's going to be 25 for each orange. And the combination of oranges and lemons should be less than or equal to, now I'm not going to write $2 because I have cents and cents, so the dollars have to be in cents. And to convert between the two, you multiply by 100. This is going to be 200 cents. So we have this inequality, but if I try and graph this for part B, it's going to be a big inequality to solve, as in you need a bigger graph. It would work. It would work with the graph that you have, but as in you'll be dealing with bigger numbers, so it would still fit on the same graph. So we do want to simplify it. So divide by 25 throughout, and you're going to get 2x plus y less than or equal to 8. Okay, these are the same, they would fit on the same graph, but this is easier to deal with. So this is our first inequality. The second inequality, they've told us that she must not buy more than 2 melons. So this is our first condition. So the melons can't be more than 2, so they have to be less than or equal to 2. Again, be aware, is 2 included in this? Yes, 2 is included. She's just not allowed to buy more than 2. Our third inequality is that the oranges have to be at least 4. So the minimum oranges can be is 4, and it can be more than that. And then the last condition is that the combination of both fruits should be at least 6. So if I get a minimum of 2 melons and or the maximum 2 melons and the minimum 4 oranges, I will get a combination of 6. So a combination of my melons and oranges should be at least 6, so it should be 6 and more. So these are all conditions that Ula has to satisfy. So these are your inequalities, and just getting to these is a good step forward. And then you need to graph these inequalities, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to graph all of them together, and then I'm going to show you how to shade each region on its own. So we are going to look at the first graph. I'm going to graph the easy ones actually. So let's start with the first one. If you want to graph an inequality which doesn't look like these, you have to substitute in points in there to get it. It's just a straight line. So the graphing that you're gonna do, you're gonna pretend that you're gonna graph an equation and not an inequality. So I'm gonna pretend that this is 2x plus y equals to 8. Okay, so this is how we graph it. And then we're gonna shade out or shade in the region that we don't want. So for 2x plus y, in order to graph any line, you can change this to a form of y equals mx plus c, up to you. But to graph any function in this form, a linear line, all you have to have is 2 coordinates. So you can pick any x coordinates, substitute in here any 2 points, and you're going to get the y values for both of them, and then you can plot it. But if I'm in this general form where x and y is on one side, it's actually easier to find the equations of the intercepts. So if let me find the x-intercept first. Or let me find the y-intercept first. So to find the y-intercept in here, you need to make x equals to 0, because any coordinate on the y-intercept has an x value of 0. So if I make x equals to 0 in this equation, I'm going to get 2, 0 plus y equals to 8. And so y is equal to 8. So my first set of coordinates is 0, 8. So 0 and then 8. So this is my first coordinate. And then in order to find the other coordinates, what we're going to do is make y equals to 0. Now, you are used to making x, you are used to just picking any two x values and substituting in to get a straight line. But because we're in general form, I'm allowed to substitute in x. I'm also allowed to substitute in a y. So I'm going to find the x-intercept by making y equals to 0. So again, you can pick any points, but these are the easiest points to work with. So 2x plus 0 equals to 8. And so x is equal to, just divide by 2, so you get 4. So your next coordinate is 0, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is my line. So that's the first step, is to graph it. And then you need to decide the type of line. Because this is less than and equal to, less than or equal to, then the line I'm going to connect these 2 points with is going to be a straight line. If it wasn't if it was just strictly less than 8, then your line has to be a dotted line. So the dotted line means that the line is not included in the set of solutions. I'm going to color code each line I graph. So this is my first line. So this is the first line, and the trick is just to substitute x equals to 0 and then substitute y equals to 0. So I'm going to do the same thing for the fourth one. So I'm going to pretend I'm graphing x plus y equals to 6. And the same thing, I'm going to make x equals to 0. So if I make x equals to 0, y is equal to 6. And if I make y equals to 0, I'm going to get x equals to 6. And so my coordinates are 6, 0. So I have 0, let's choose a different color. We have 0, 6. And we have 6, 0. Actually, for any equation where you have x plus y equals to a number, your answers are always going to be this number in both intercepts. So that's a trick to know, given that the x and y have a coefficient of 1. So let's graph this line. And so just to fix it up a bit so it's a bit more accurate. So we have these 2 lines. And then what we did, we just graphed the lines, which still haven't shaded the required region. So what we graphed is the 2x plus y equals to 8, and this is x plus y equals to 6. And then your horizontal and vertical lines are easy to graph. So I have, let's pick green for these. So your x less than or equal to 2, just graph x equals to 2, which is a vertical line. And let's make it slightly thicker. And your horizontal line is y greater than or equal to 4, but you're going to graph, remember, graph them as an equation, you're going to graph y equals to 4. And all of them have an equal to underneath the inequality. So that's why all my lines are solid lines and not dotted lines. So let's pick orange. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I should have labeled the axes, but so this is my, I don't know, I can pick another color. Purple. Okay. So label the lines so that you're not confused with which line is which. This is y equals to 4, and this is x equals to 2. Now that you've graphed them, we have to actually shade, because what we have graphed are equations and not the inequalities. Once we shade out the regions we don't want, then we are able to find all the possible combinations of fruit she could have. So if you use an online program like GeoGebra, what they do is they shade the wanted regions. There are some videos online that shade the wanted regions, but if you're doing linear inequalities, if you're combining different inequalities together, it's best recommended that you shade the unwanted region. And read the questions that are given to you. If the question said shade the unwanted region, then that's what you have to do. So they will be clear about it. Because each person does it differently. So for the, let's start with a more complicated one. So 2x plus y less than or equal to 8. So, or let's start with the easy one so that they would make sense. I have x greater than or equal to, less than or equal to 2. So all the values here are x less than or equal to 2. Every value here is more than 2. So she's not allowed to pick the 4 and the 6, she's not allowed to pick that because the maximum she needs to get is 2 melons. So everything beyond this line is not allowed. So I'm gonna shade out this line. So this is the region that is she's not allowed to pick from. It's gonna take a while. So we have this region she's not allowed to take from. And then x greater than or equal to 4, what we have is, well, she's allowed to pick the 5 and the 6. Let me actually label the axes to make it easier. 8, 10, okay. So what she has is she's not allowed to pick more than 4, she's not allowed to pick less than 4. So 3, 2, 1, 1 is not allowed. She needs to buy at least 4 oranges. So she's not allowed to take anything below this line. So below this line is not included in the region. So we shade out these regions. Okay. And then we reach the lines, those complicated lines. So what you do with these equations, if you want to graph the inequality, we do what we call a test. So we test one point. Basically, this is your line. Now, I'll either shade this region because I don't want it, or I'm going to shade this region because I don't want it. So I just need to test one point from here and one point from here to see which one belongs in my equation. And you can pick any points, just pick any points, just not a point on the line. And the easiest point to pick is 0, 0. So all you have to do is just test 0, 0 into your inequality. If 0, 0 gives a correct inequality, then this is the region you want. If 0, 0 is not the correct inequality, then this is the region you don't want. So to graph an inequality equation where it's not a straight line, you have to do the inequality test. So I've graphed my straight line, but the last step is to do the test. So I'm going to test for the first one. We have 2x plus y equals to 8. I want to see, does this 0, 0 belong to this red region? So we're talking about the red line now. So I'm going to test 2, 0 plus 0. Sorry, we're not talking about equals to 8. We're talking about, what is it? Less than or equal to 8. So we want to see, is this true? So less than or equal to 8, 2 times 0 is 0, plus 0 is 0. So we have 0 less than or equal to 8, which is true. So the point 0, 0 belongs in the region. So anything on the other side of the line, so this is our line, 0, 0 belongs in the region, so we need to shade this side. So we have red, and because our line is red, so 0, 0 has to belong on it. I know we've shaded out 0, 0, but we're talking about the region itself. So I don't want anything beyond this line. Okay, if we shaded this first, then 0, 0 would have belonged in there already. I don't need to do all of this, but just to make a point across. Okay, and then, so I'm left with a very small section. So it's either this section or this section. And it's going to be determined by the last one. So for equation 4, I have x plus y greater than or equal to 6. And I'm going to test my 0 and 0. 0 greater than or equal to 6, which is not true. 0 is not greater than or equal to 6. So this is my line, and this is 0, 0. So 0, 0 doesn't belong in the region, so I'm going to shade below my line. So I have my blue line here, and I'm going to shade below it, because I don't want this region. Quite a mess this graph has become. So we have this, and how nice, we are left with a tiny triangle, and usually you should be left with one region, and from this region you're going to pick the list of combinations. Now, the list of combinations, you have to understand the question. Because we're talking about fruits and melons, you can't buy half melons and half fruits. So in this question, we need to look at what we call integer solutions. So I'm going to zoom in and see where my integer solutions are. So be aware that if your solutions lie on the line, then you need to make sure that your line is a solid line and not a dotted line. So I'm going to explain that a bit more. So when you select your combinations, you need to pick something that is on the line, inside, and if it's on the line, you need to be careful that it has to be a solid line. So for example, if I need to pick this solution and it's a dotted line, I'm not allowed to pick it. So I'm just going to ignore it. You're also going to focus on integer solutions. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to make a big point of all the lines of coordinates we need to pick. So this is the first one. It's 2 and 4. So I'm going to pick this line, this point, sorry, this point as well. So we're safe because all the lines are solid. If this was dotted, I'm not allowed to pick it. Also make sure you go on inside and on the line and also on the axes. Okay, so you're allowed to pick this point, this point. Obviously you can't take any negative points, you can't buy negative fruits. So this point, you can't have this because this is a half, well, a 0.5. You're allowed to have this, and there's nothing else. So the list of fruits are, let's do, okay, let's just write them out here. So the list of solutions are going to be, we have 2, 4, we have 1, 5, we have 0, 6, 0, 7, 0, 8, and we have 1, 4. Sorry, 1, 6. Okay. So what you want to do as well, if you have time, is try to see if all the combinations fit into these. So for example, just try to calculate the cost of these. So 2 times x, 2 times 50 cents, or let's use the simpler one. So 2 times, I'm picking the first coordinate, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 plus 4 is 8, so that's, yes, less than or equal to 8. And then I have 2 is equal to 2, so I'm allowed to have that. I have 4 greater than or equal to 4. I have 2 plus 4 is equal to 6, so I'm allowed to do that. Let's pick the 1, 5. 2 times 1 is 2, and then plus 5 is 7, and that is less than 8, so I'm allowed to have that. And then I have, again, 1 is less than 2. I have 5 is greater than 4. I have 1 plus 5 is 6, which is equal to 6. So I am allowed to have the 1, 5 is a good combination to have. So test out all your numbers, make sure they fit in all the requirements. If the question asks you for more for a part C where they tell you find the cheapest option, then calculate the cost of each one and see which one is the cheapest option to pick. Hopefully the video is clear. Watch the previous videos where I explain these type of questions even more.